Hello and a very warm welcome to another video from Auto Night. Today I'm going to be introducing you to my 2010 BMW. It's a 325i and it's an E92. Now, you may have seen it in the intros and you may have heard me talking about it, but you won't yet have seen it in any great detail. This is my 2010 LCI BMW 325i E92. I've owned this car for nearly 2 years. Bought this in March 2020. It was just at the start of the COVID pandemic. I think it was just before we went into lockdown. I know I certainly remember shortly after buying this, taking it to have a new tyre fitted, and I wasn't allowed to leave the car. I had to sit inside while the vehicle was jacked up and the tyre was fitted, and it was a very weird experience. Prior to this, I had an Audi A4. It was a B8, so that was a 2009 1.8 TFSI, and I wanted to sell that and I wanted to buy something else because I wanted a 6-cylinder engine in a car, and this goes back a long way, this urge to drive a 6-cylinder, as back as a young lad, when I were a lad, I developed something of an obsession with the 6-cylinder Vauxhalls, the big Vauxhalls. So we're talking Senators and Opel Monzas, and I worked my way through the Vauxhall range as a 19-year-old. At one point, oh my gosh, you've never seen so many cyclists. Yeah, so I worked my way through the range from the Mark 1 Astra to the Mark II Cavalier, and then I had a Mark II Carlton, great big thing for a young chap, but I absolutely loved it, but that was only a 4-cylinder. So I went a step further at the time and bought myself an Opel Monza, which was a 1983 3-litre E, was an auto in what now would seem a really lurid shade of gold. And the interior wasn't much different either. That was a kind of champagne-y colour, lots of velour, but I adored that car, and it was everything I ever wanted, and I still love the look of the Opel Monza, the second generation Monza, to this very day. Very rare, very expensive, sadly very rot prone, but my relationship with that car was to be quite short, as it used an insane amount of fuel. It used to average about 14 to the gallon, and for a 19-year-old trainee in the motor trade, I didn't earn very much. It had to go, and I was gutted. And I never had a 6-cylinder car after that. So there were a number of options open to me. I would have liked to have stayed loyal to the Volkswagen Group, but they have gone the sort of V6 route, or the narrow angle VR6, and I really had it in my head. It had to be straight 6. It had to be normally aspirated as well. There are some Mercedes straight 6s. I think they go back quite a way now though, and they went over to V as well. So the obvious choice, BMW. They've been doing straight 6s forever, and I bought this. So as I say, it's a 2010, so it is an LCI car. I think they're much nicer, the LCI, in terms of looks. They've lost a little bit of the aggressiveness in terms of their looks. It's a little bit more graceful looking. But I like that. It's a good balance. I like the LED lights at the back. I think they look magnificent. And various other details. This took quite a bit of hunting. And there was a lot of rubbish out there. But the chap that was selling this seemed very nice, and I always like buying cars from people that I like. It had good history, and it had very low mileage. It was only in the low 60s back then when I bought this. And it's only on 76 now. Having a number of cars and a motorbike does give me the advantage of being able to spread the mileage across a number of my cars. But back to this car. Yeah, I snapped it up. Everything seemed right, and I really like the colour, space grey, and the interior, the nice black leather. So how's it been in that time? on the whole, very good. I really like the way this car is put together. It feels a lot more expensive than it actually is. It has the piano black trimmings on the dash and door trims. I like the kind of the almost mood lighting. There is a name for this, and I don't know what it is, but the ambient lighting that comes down. I really like the sound of this car. So this has the N53 3-litre engine. Some say it's BMW's last normally aspirated 6-cylinder engine that they ever used. And a lot of cars have the N52. Now both have their issues, and discussing their Achilles heels and their issues is probably beyond the scope of this little intro video. The N53 is known for having issues with the high pressure fuel pump, fuel injectors, coil packs, and the water pumps are said to only last around 60,000 miles. It's an electric water pump. Now, if that's the case, I don't think this one's ever been done, so it must be on borrowed time. Now, in terms of how this car has been while I've owned it, on the whole, very good. Naturally, I've serviced it. I change the oil every 5,000 miles, and anyone who's already seen my other video on the Jeep, my lubricants video, will know that I'm very loyal to the Quantum brand for oil. That's a brand that's sold through the VW Audi dealer network, and they do a whole range. So I use 5W40 in this. Now the recommendation is 5W30, but I just find it does use a little bit of oil if I use that one, if I use that grade. If I use the 5W40, the 40 meaning it's thicker at higher temperatures, it just uses less oil. It's not an oil burner in the sense that it uses a lot, but I just have to top it up. These cars don't have a dipstick. They have an electronic oil level system, and I think it's very fair to say that the best way to deal with that is to only top up when it suggests you do. When you change your oil and fill it with whatever the capacity is for the given car, you know it's right, and it will tell you it's right as well on the dash. Now, when it gets to a certain level, it will tell you to add a litre. That's the best time to top it up. If you start looking at the electronic gauge and topping it up with 0.25 or half a litre here and there in between, you can really have trouble knowing what your actual oil level is, as the electronic system's really slow to respond, and you can. There's no point. Just put a litre in when it tells you and have faith in it. It's okay. So in terms of what's gone wrong with this car, it did develop a misfire, and an engine management light came on. Now that was happening when it was cold, and it was quite lumpy. I did put it on a scanner, and yeah, I mean, it had a cylinder misfire. I just tried a coil pack first because they're individual coil packs on these. They're not that expensive, so I bought one Bosch coil, swapped it out on the cylinder that was showing to have the fault, but as I expected, it was actually a fuel injector. I had 3 of those replaced. They were changed by a specialist with the genuine BMW parts of the very latest index number. They have different index numbers. The early indexes did fail and cause problems, but the latest index number, the chap assured me that they're wired in 2 banks, so 1 to 3 and then 4 to 6. So I had 4, 5 and 6 done. I could have done it myself. Wouldn't have been an issue. Oh, it's a bad road. Wouldn't have been an issue to have done that myself. However, I calculated it to buy the diagnostic equipment for the programming element. It would have cost me a bit more than to have paid this guy to do it. So be it. So I paid him. A little coolant flange that's quite notorious on these for disintegrating. The original is made of a kind of fibrous plastic substance. It just breaks up with heat over time. I replaced that with an aluminium one. Really nice part, actually. It was a work of art, that thing. It came from the US. I had to wait a while for it, but I didn't want one of the Chinese ones, so I got a a nice part. And I bled the cooling system, and I did a full coolant change at the time, replenished the antifreeze. And I have to say, other manufacturers should take note. What an amazing bleeding system on these. Electronic automatic bleeding process. It's fabulous. It saves a lot of fuss and bother. I guess that's the one advantage of having the electric water pump, even if it does cost hundreds to replace when it fails. There was some wear on one of the seats. This driver's side bolster on the right here had some wear to the leather. And I found a nice second-hand seat on eBay in really good condition. And I took both seats apart and swapped over the backrest cover onto this car from the one I bought on eBay. And it looks much better. And then when I put the other seat back together with the old cover, I made quite a nice office chair out of it. I got some timber and made a frame and a base, covered it with some acoustic carpet and mounted the seat to that. And it's a great office chair. It's in my office at home, and it's more comfortable than any other chair that I've managed to find. So I can sit and work and edit and do things in the comfort of a BMW E92 chair. There are a couple of recalls on these. One is linked to a battery terminal, and the other is to do with a section of wiring, the last section of wiring to the heater fan motor, which can overheat and cause fires. And those who've seen my earlier video on my friend's E90 that went up in flames will know that that was one area that was suspect on his car. We don't know if that caused it, but it's really important that recall is done. A new section of wiring is fitted, which is heavier duty, and mine has already been done, I'm pleased to say. So what were my first impressions when I first got this car after the Audi? I think the most striking thing was the handling. For anyone who's owned a front-wheel drive car, you'll be familiar with understeer, torque steer. They're all front-wheel drive traits. But in the BMW, these are completely absent. There's a real sense of neutrality about the handling. It just does what you want it to do. It's like man and machine in perfect harmony. It doesn't fight you. It doesn't resist you. It goes where you want it to go. Given its engine size, this car is surprisingly economical. It averages around 31 miles per gallon, which is really good. Far better than my Jeep, that's for sure. I think my only criticism of this car is the driving position. Now, I'm 6'1" and about 15 stone. It is a bit cramped. I find it does give me a dead leg on a long journey. And that might be me and not the car. I wouldn't want to take this on a long road trip. I'd probably take the Jeep. Well, I hope you enjoyed this short introduction to my BMW E92. I had hoped to get more outdoor footage in this video. However, due to the wild and windy weather this weekend, it was really difficult to get any usable footage. I am fairly new to YouTube. I only started my channel in January this year. It would mean a lot to me if you could subscribe. Once again, I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you and goodbye.